Do it's Chemdork.
Hello everyone, this is Chemdork, and welcome to episode number 56 of Season 2 of my Buildcraft, where we play Minecraft with the mods Buildcraft, Thermal Expansion, and Forestry. Well, in episode number 55, we did this. We put together maybe the robot superhighway, I don't know, to solve the 96 block problem, and did a lot of creative world messing around, and then we built this thing. And pretty cool. So we built this, we built we used redstone, we built a lot of things, and all for the purpose of getting our robots to transport long distances, or over long distances, I should say, oil from a tank that's way over there to a tank that's way over here. I have to say that the robots actually aren't running right now, and the reason is twofold. Well, for one, there is still the issue that I knew I would have to solve, and that is one of power. So right now, the robots have no real good place to go to get power, and there's also some behavioral things about robots that I have to still look up. So right now, these robots are here. I just placed them here for power. So you can see this guy is mostly powered. This guy is actually not mostly powered. He's actually at a level of, we can check, 19% charged. And this guy is, I think he's 100% charged, but maybe not. Yeah, 99, so pretty much, yeah. So anyways, I just placed them here. They can find these stations if they're low enough on power, but the behavioral pattern of robots, especially when told to go to home, or go to a station, is very different than work in area. So it's much better to have them go to a station when they're working in area than go to home. So we'll have to figure out how to solve and tackle that problem. I have some ideas, but not for this episode. For this episode, you might notice, well, they stopped working, but that's okay because there's no more oil in here. And let me actually go and show you why that is. Be right back. There's no oil over there because there's really not much oil over here. So where is here? Well, here is the place where we're supposedly pumping the oil from. Because this had a monstrous geyser next to it, which is really cool. Well, at least I thought it was cool, until I realized that the monstrous geyser was actually a medium-sized geyser. So I thought we were at 110 or so of Y coordinate. I thought this went down almost 100 blocks, and then it was a large bulb at the bottom, which would be a large oil deposit, because I kind of thought that any oil geyser that was popping out of the mountains here had to be that. Turns out that's not true, and this was a medium oil deposit, so there wasn't much oil here to begin with, and so our idea of having crazy amounts of oil that we actually share with the main base is kind of silly. But, however, the work we did last episode and the redstone we put down here and the redstone we put in the tank over there is not going to be wasted, not at all. Because guess what we're going to do? We just have to change our plans a bit. So I was going to run some things robot over here using that oil, but instead of oil, we'll use biofuel, and biofuel is from the main base. So whereas now all this redstone, which is pretty much which actually is identical over here versus the other tank that's over here, right now I'm pumping things from this tank to that tank. What I'll need to do is actually pump biofuel, excess biofuel, from this area, from the main base area, to go to essentially this tank or something pretty similar. So, no big deal. It's basically using the exact same circuitry and everything, just reversing the polarity. Now, before we do that, however, there's something I want to tackle, and that's going to be part of what we're going to be doing this episode. So here's where we make biofuel, although you might notice there's something a little bit odd. As I come down, you kind of notice that these two tree farms actually don't have tree farms. Well, where are the tree farms? They were here before, and that's true, they were. I did not remove them. All I did was update. And in doing so, what it does, or what it did, and this update happened a long while ago, actually. And in one of the updates, the forestry blocks basically disappeared. The farms specifically disappeared. So we had these farms running on energy cells and energy conduits, I believe, essentially. And we will do, and that was using the old power system. Since we've switched to the new power system, we haven't set up the forestry tree farms yet, and various farms yet. So there's not just those two farms. There's this tree farm, which was my first one. There's the nether wart farm. there's a wheat farm and there's a melon farm. So all these farms are connected downstairs, and we're going to set them up to use our new power system. There's a few key things we're going to have to think about when we do that, however. And so we'll get into that in just a minute. First order of business, however, is put back the farms, because they're not here. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll be right back, and then I'll set up some things, and then yeah, I'll be right back. Okay. Of course, the point of this episode is not just to rebuild our forestry farms, but rather to figure out how we're going to power them. So I'm going to take a minute here in the creative world just to sort of talk about the powering of these farms in a general sense, and then we'll go back to the normal world and start building in the power system for them. So in my base, I have the standard tree farm for wood, I have a wheat farm, I have a netherwort farm, I have a melon/pumpkin farm, and then the two farms that together make my biodiesel empire. That is the one that's supplying saplings, the blue maho saplings, and the one that's supplying the papaya fruit. Pay no attention to this stuff over here, is just some me playing around, but we're kind of going to use some of the stuff I learned over here in today's episode. So, how are we going to supply power to these farms? Previously, we had an entire power system based off of energy cells and energy conduits from thermal expansion. And they work great for farms because farms require power a little differently than normal machines. So normal machines, they're either kind of like on or off, or they need power or they don't need power, and it's pretty clear that they either need power at one point and then they don't need power when they don't need it. And farms are, I mean, they're the same way, but they are intermittent in their need for power. They don't need a constant supply when they're on, they just need it every now and then to do certain things. So for example, a wheat farm, most of the time it's just waiting for the wheat to grow. But when it does grow, and it's in this state for example, it'll say, I need a little power, give me a little power to kill the wheat, give me a little power to pick it up, give me a little power to place another sapling, and then it'll wait again and again and again. And so every now and then it needs a decent amount of power, but for the most part it doesn't need it. So if you supply power to a farm with an engine, it's a bit of an overkill. So that's why the energy cells are great, because every now and then it can just trickle out of the energy cell. And that's what we're going to be using for our farms. And that's the reason why we're going to use energy cells. So if I simulated the farms by these energy cells here, and essentially we're just going to supply power with an energy cell. Great, awesome! But then the question remains, how do we power this energy cell? Because with our new power system, it's not entirely based on energy cells, which supply power whenever it's needed. Our system supplies power when we ask it to. So, and it supplies the amount of power that we ask it to do. So we need to, at some point in time, what we would like to happen is, when this is empty, have it request to send power to it. And then when it's full, you can turn off that portion of the power plant. Send the request to say, I no longer need power. So we're going to use that to our advantage when we're thinking about supplying energy to our farms. And so let's go back into the world and set that up. Hooray! Hooray! We have our farms back. So yay! We have our farms back, but they're not actually working at this point because we don't have any power. But here they are, the pumpkin melon farm, the wheat farm, the netherwort farm, our basic normal tree farm, and you can see up there is the papaya farm, and next to it is the blue maho sapling farm. By the way, I just really love this area of my base. I don't go here often enough. It's really bright and fun. I just love it. Anyways, especially during the day, even at night it's pretty cool too. Used to have pretty better lighting before I lost some of the lamps, but anyways. Let's actually go ahead and look at the top farms, because I put them back in. I also put back in some kinesis pipes that I needed, and just because I didn't feel like putting them in later, and I didn't feel like showing you guys that. You don't need to see me put in everything, right? So up here we have a leadstone energy cell. Leadstone energy cells within, kind of in line to this system, they're all going to be connected to one main energy cell, which is going to be this hardened energy cell. But these just act as kind of like a buffer to hold more energy. That's all. No big deal. I don't need it, but I just have it here. So this is the orchard over here, and the sapling farm over here. And notice I put back the redstone gate logic. So basically this blue signal on means I want to ask this farm to do stuff. Red signal off here means this. I got plenty of saplings. I don't need any more. So anyway, so if we follow the signal down, here's the kinesis pipe. I'm using stone kinesis pipes because we don't need that much power from these farms. They're not really a huge power sink, but when they need power, we want to supply it power. And we'll continue to follow this all the way down here. And now if we continue to follow it, it goes here and splits. At this point, it goes to the right, which goes to the basic tree farm. Nice. You may recall that from earlier episodes. And it splits over this way to go to the netherwort farm, the wheat, and the pumpkin melon farms. Okay. So then we're going to connect this in line with the main power through the use of an energy cell. And this is going to be our main energy cell for that purpose. So let's go ahead and connect them now. Yeah, just like that, right here. This seems fine. I'm going to connect it just like that. And then we need a wooden kinesis pipe. Otherwise, we can't pull power from it. So there we go. And then we'll set this up to be able to pull. And whoops, there you go. Okay, so that's the setup we need. Orange means it supplies power, blue means it accepts power, and I have everything else yellow just because we want those faces to be off, just in case. So anyway, so there we go. That's pretty much it. Also why I'm using stone is because you use wooden kinesis pipes to pull power out, and the power input pipe, its max is 320 redstone flux per tick, and it's silly to use golden kinesis pipes then, so we're using stone, which is half that, which makes sense. So the maximum we can say send half of that amount over this way, and half of that amount over this way, which goes to that energy cell way up top. Okay, makes sense, right? So now how do we tell our power plant over here that, because when this is empty, like it is now, and if I'm not running my power plant, which I am not now, I want to have this automatically turn on the power plant to provide energy that can fill this. And then when this is full of power, I want it to ask the power plant to turn off. And it'll turn on the power plant to provide probably 2 levels of power since, well, I don't know, these can supply 60 redstone flux per tick. I guess that means we can technically do 3 levels of power, but I'll probably just do 2 levels, which is going to be plenty. And then I'll turn off 2 levels of power when this is full. So how do we do that? Well, we do that using some gates. But before we actually put them into place, we need to actually go over how these gates work. Specifically, we're going to be using some triggers. And so when you put a gate next to, on a kinesis pipe next to, or any pipe actually, next to a machine that can hold power, we have these other triggers that we can use, low energy stored and high energy stored. And we're going to be using these to control that. But there's some nuances here that we should know about. And so let's go to the creative world to learn a bit about how these work, because it's not quite as simple as you might think. Okay, be right back. Here on the My Buildcraft series, you probably know by now that I love to go in the creative world first to kind of mess around with things before I put it in my world. And there's a good reason for that, because some things don't behave exactly how you think they should on first glance. So this is actually a good example of that. So we're going to be testing out how these gate triggers work, the 2 triggers in particular, the high energy stored and low energy stored gate triggers, as they work with energy cells and kinesis pipes and whatnot. So I have a high energy cell, or I have a hardened energy cell with high, well, I would say is arguably high energy storage. It's full. It's completely full. And I have 2 kinesis, sort of an incoming kinesis pipe and an external outgoing, or outgoing kinesis pipe over here with the wooden pipe. And this face is set to go outgoing, and this face is set for incoming of the actual energy cell itself. See? So both gates are actually set up in the same manner, and they're set up whereas they both are outputting a red pipe signal, so that we can tell when the trigger of high energy storage is true, and the trigger of low energy stored, when that's true, an action of turning on the yellow pipe signal will happen. So that means we can just read the status of high energy storage and low energy storage by looking at these 2 pipe wires. I chose red and yellow because they're on this face, but also because it's like ketchup and mustard. Yeah. So anyway, this is high in terms of its energy. It's full, and both are reading high energy storage. No issue, no surprise here. When we actually remove it, so let's see what happens when we put an empty energy cell. But before we do that, let's just remove it and see what happens. Okay, that's a little weird. So already we see a strange difference. There appears to be an effect from being on a wooden kinesis pipe, and in fact that's actually what the case is. If you set this command just on a wooden kinesis pipe, high energy storage, you'll see that low energy storage is true on a wooden kinesis pipe. Strange. Even when there's no power flowing through it. It's just a weird thing. Because wooden kinesis pipes can actually, they're kind of like a power draw, so I believe they do have some sort of storage associated with them, and I believe that's why it is true. Not positive on that one, but I'm pretty sure it stores some energy and then outputs it. At least it's kind of written like that, I believe, in the code. The high energy and low energy trigger, well, we see how the trigger is operating on the gold kinesis pipes. But this is an interesting sort of difference that, I don't know, we'll have to take into account. So if we put an empty energy cell, and there's still some residual power in this pipe, so let's just put it down again. It's truly empty, and what we see is this makes sense now. It's reading true for low energy storage for both, which would make sense. So if the energy cell is empty, its low energy storage is true for both. If the energy cell is full, like it is over here, then what? I thought we just saw that this was true for both. Well, as it turns out, the signal for the wooden kinesis pipe overrides anything because, well, it's next to not an outgoing face. So if we change that to outgoing, now it should be pretty much true. And yet it's not. This changes to represent what would make sense, but actually this one does not. And that's the reason for that is because, again, this energy cell is actually not quite full. So we see that next to an energy cell on an incoming face, unless it's completely full, this high energy stored trigger is false. So this effectively is registering as full energy storage when it's next to an energy cell on an incoming face. On the outgoing face, though, it's a little different because it's kind of mixed up with the signals for the wooden pipe. And this is true. Why is this true? Well, my theory, anyways, is that this is an external face, so this energy, that little drop in energy, it went kind of nowhere, but I think it's stored in this pipe, and specifically it's stored in this wooden pipe. But the wooden pipe has nowhere to put it. So the wooden pipe actually is full of energy, and that's what's being read here. I believe that's what's going on. Pretty sure that's the case. And if we think about it that way, then it sort of makes sense with how these are operating. But we will have to keep this in mind as we use these signals. So that's fine for reading when this thing is full. What about reading when it's empty? We obviously can't use this low energy stored trigger to read it's empty on the incoming face. But what about on the outgoing face? It sure seems like we could do that. And in fact, that is actually the case. Interestingly, when you start to pump power out, so if we put an empty one here, this now still reads high energy storage because this wooden pipe is full of energy. When this thing is completely empty and the wooden pipe drains of all of its power, then it'll show as empty. So that's actually how we can read that this is completely out of energy. So if we switch that, we'll just do it here. Essentially, there you go. Okay, so this is reading as if when this is empty, this is now reading this correctly, as we expected. So what that tells us is that from the outgoing face, this is where we can read the energy cell is empty. From the incoming face, this is where we can read that it is full. So if we start supplying it with power, let's do it this way. I think we already did this, but just in case, I'm just gonna try to cover it. Oops, what face is it? This one? Yeah, it's that one. Okay, so as we start it with supplying it with power, notice that this is not changing. This will only change when this is all the way full, then this will now become true. Okay, so I hope that kind of made sense. We're going to be reading that it's full from the incoming face, and we're going to be reading if it's true that it is empty from the outgoing face. But hopefully that explains sort of why you see that difference, and we're actually going to use that little behavior built into the Buildcraft and thermal expansion code as well to kind of exploit this and use it in our world. Okay, see you in a second. Well, now that we learned how the behavior of those two gate triggers work, let's actually use them in the world. So we're going to read the status that this is empty. We're going to read the low energy stored trigger, and we're going to read it from the external face. And we know that based on what we just learned. And we know that in order to read this is full, we read that full status as high energy stored, and we read that from the incoming face, the incoming energy face. So, okay, good. So this is all set up. And you notice I set these to output a redstone signal when each of them is true. So we're going to be using these signals to initiate or to tell our power plant that it needs to add some power to the system. And then we're going to also use it to tell the power plant to remove power from the system. So obviously, when this is empty, we want to tell it to add power to the system. And when this turns back to full, we want to tell it to remove power from the system. And each of those is done by a single pulsed signal that will change the pipe wire. It'll basically send combinations of different colored pipe wires down this pipe, which will kind of do the stuff we messed around with some episodes ago when we designed and built this power plant. So, but that's, how do we do that, right? You know, how exactly are we going to do that? Well, I want to make sure that these two are interlinked. And the way in which to interlink that is, basically, this is a lever. It is no different whatsoever than me doing this. So if you think about it as a lever, it becomes a little easier to think about. So essentially, if this lever is pointed that way, maybe, it means that we wanna turn on some power to this power plant. And we want to link this side, if it turns on, to turning off the lever, essentially, because we don't need power any longer. So we're essentially hooking up these two signals as a lever, and the magic, awesome circuit we can use for doing that is an RS NOR latch. So we're going to build one. We're going to build one a little differently than we normally do, though, because we're going to take advantage of the fact that these are kind of close together, and we're actually just going to build this into an RS NOR latch. So how you do this in this manner is that, well, it's just sort of like a spread out weird RS NOR latch. So one half of it is sort of separated from the other half, and we're gonna do this. And there we go. It's an RS NOR latch. So it's a 1-bit memory cell. If I turn that one on, if I turn this on, wait. If I turn that on, oh wait, I can't turn it on because this is, hold on. Let me remove these triggers for a second. If I turn this side on, it stays on. If I turn this side on, that stays on. So there you go. Okay, we can put these triggers back. These actions back, I should say. Okay. So then when this side turns on, we're going to set it to do stuff. We're going to set it to send out a pulse, and we can do that with a circuit that's known as a edge trigger. So we did that before. And since these two are going to be right next to each other, when this side turns on, which is the same as this torch turning on, so we're just going to set it up like this, it'll turn on this edge trigger. So we're just going to build two edge triggers here. So here we go. We've built a few of these before. These don't have to be any particular length, but I happen to like 2 repeater worth of pulse length. The number of repeaters dictates the length of the signal. I just like 2 repeaters because it seems right. I have no other reason for that. It just seems like it's long enough to actually do stuff. If it's too short, it may not fire the pipe the pipe wires correctly. So I want it to be long enough to do that, but we don't need it insanely long. So it's the 2 gates are a reasonable way. Let's see if I can actually place this on top of the torch. How awesome am I? Very, very awesome. Okay, so another block on top of this guy. There we go. And then some redstone on top. There's 1. There's 2. And, yep, okay. Oh, we're out of redstone. Oh, no. Let me grab some more. I'll be right back. Okay, there we go. So these torches should be off at this point. They will turn on. When this line turns from off to on, it will send out a pulse. That's how these edge triggers work. When this line turns from off to on, it'll send out a pulse. Notice it's still on. It is not going to pulse. And just like before, I'll show you how these work. So when I put this back, it's a pulse. Yay! And likewise, this will happen in the same way. So where do we need to connect these? Well, luckily it's just right here. So this is set up perfectly. Yay! And I just realized that I will have to figure out what to actually... Here, I had to figure out what the pulses actually needs to be. I don't remember what it needs to be for both of these, but... well, we'll basically set up the gates this way, and then I'll set up the pipe wire. So I'll be right back. I have to figure out what the pulse sequence needs to be based on the system we have here. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, let's actually figure this out. So this is kind of set up like this. This is the add or remove 1 line. This is add and remove 2 engines line. Add 3, remove 3, add, remove 4, and this is on, full off. So the green one is add that power, and the pink one is subtract that number of power. So we want when this turns on, which means when this side turns on, which means when this pulse is sent, it should send a sequence of pipe wire signals that correspond to adding 2 units, which is this. And it's set so that red pipe signal on, blue pipe signal on, and then it does its thing. So we need red, blue to add 2. So red, blue to add 2 is, we'll just use a iron gate here, and we'll set this as red and blue. And I'll finish the wires a little bit in a second here. And then likewise over here to remove 2, it's set to just green. So just green, no big deal, just green. Boom. Green is gold? Yay, okay, good. Actually, I'll use the gold ore gate because I have more of those. And so this is when it gets a redstone signal, send out a green pipe signal. When it gets a redstone signal, do red and blue. Okay, and then yeah, let's hook them up now. That's fine. I think I should be able to do that. I hope this is set with the green pipe signal. It's not. That's okay. So we just need to make sure this goes all the way over. All the way over. And because these pipe wires are so long, that's what actually generates a lot of lag in my world when these things turn off and on. So I try to make these as efficient as possible, but it doesn't always work. Okay, red's already set up to be connected to things. Blue, I believe, is as well. So let's, yeah, okay, blue is fine. Okay, so this should actually work. So when, so we're actually done. That's it, guys. It's all set. So that means that when I, in order to sort of start this and sort of override it, I need to send a pulse. And in order to do that, we know that we need to simulate this is now just became empty. And when it just became empty, this happened. And it sets that, and it's adding some snowballs. Come on, add some snowballs. I believe you're supposed to add snowballs. Oh, wait a minute, I'm an idiot. I didn't put back this stuff. Okay, I'll be right back. Let me actually put that stuff back. I have to wait for the system to kind of reset it. Okay, now we're ready, I believe. I gave it some time. I made the repairs to these 2 blocks. That's why it didn't work. Okay, hold on. Wait a minute. Let's do it again. Okay, so when this is empty, this will turn on and turn on this part of the RS NOR latch, and when that happens, essentially what we get is a pulse right here. There you go. That's what's supposed to happen. This is actually supposed to turn on for a bit and send some snowballs into the engines, turning on 2 of them. Just 2. That's all we actually should see. And that's the case. Awesome. And then this is actually starting to get power. Hooray! There you go. And it's all set. I mean, that's basically it. These farms are not really on right now. So I guess no power really is being drawn at this point. So this guy isn't on because he's full. He's actually set to be off. This guy isn't on either. This farm doesn't need to be on, but let's actually just turn it on. It should, in theory, turn on. Oh, you know what? It needs these farms all need fertilizer and stuff. Hold on, I'll be right back. Well, everyone, I have to admit, I feel a little bit silly. So this was working fine, and then it kind of stopped working, and funny things happened, and I couldn't really understand why at first. And then it kind of hit me. Kind of an idiot. These energy cells start by default in a status of redstone control high, which meant that when they were next to these gates, which were putting out redstone signals, it was actually disabling the energy cell. So I just set that to disabled, and now it works fine. You can probably see every now and then there's a little spark of power that comes out of this thing. And as you notice, it's got plenty of power that it uses pretty slowly. So we're not going to get this empty that often. But when we do, we have the system now set up to automatically refill it. And that brings me to my final point to mention, and that is I didn't really explain, I don't think, why we need this RS NOR latch here very well. After all, you might be thinking, well, if we're reading the status of this energy cell being empty with this gate, which is putting out a redstone signal, and we're reading the status as full with this gate, which is putting out a redstone signal, can't we just hook this one up directly to this edge trigger and that one directly up to that edge trigger? Or even, what about having this just send the proper pipe signals and this send the other pipe signals and maybe hook it up to something else? Can't we just do that? Well, we could, but the problem would be that this is not cut off from my power plant, and I don't really want it to be. I want the power plant, if it has extra power, just to kind of give it to this energy cell, just like it does for some of the other main machines in my base. And so if that's the case, this will be full quite often. In fact, it might get full, get at, say, a point like this, and then I'll be running my power plant again for some other reason, and this will become full again. And what that would do if we did not have this RS NOR latch here, and we either hooked it up directly or had this send out a signal, it would basically remove 2 units of power every single time this was being read as being full of energy. And we don't want that to happen. We only want it to add units of power when it's empty, and then remove them when it's full. And in order to do that, we have to set up this sort of memory system of the RS NOR latch, because if you give this a constant signal of full, nothing changes to the circuit. That's the whole idea. Okay, guys, that'll do it for this episode. Just thought I'd explain that last point there. But now we have farms. Yay! So cool. We can do some other awesome things. And we will be doing that in the next episode. So I'll leave by sort of walking here and admiring the farms in this nice area that we built so long ago. So hopefully I'll be expanding a little bit in the base. I have some ideas for things to do in the future. And we will have to set up and continue the biofuel transport back to the robot base now, using the other robots, and kind of address that power system issue. Might be doing that next episode, maybe something different. Who knows? Okay, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next episode, and take care. Bye-bye now.